Aliens mock humans, water filter, until it saves them from death, reaches its dramatic zenith when a devastating silica storm destroys all advanced technology, leaving Lena's primitive filtration system as the team's only hope. With 3 teammates already evacuated and another showing symptoms, the once arrogant aliens must swallow their pride and embrace the ancient human technique, or face mission failure and possible death. The twin red suns of Sci-Fi cast an eerie crimson glow across the barren landscape, illuminating swirling clouds of silica that hung suspended in the thin atmosphere. Cadet Lena Hart squinted through her helmet visor, the specialized polarization barely cutting through the haze. This was her first interplanetary survival mission, and the Academy had chosen a hell of a place to test their skills. "Movement to the west," came Omar Kane's voice through her comms. The only other Terran on the expedition, Omar had been assigned as her partner, more out of necessity than choice. "Think it's one of those silicon-based herbivores the briefing mentioned?" Lena adjusted her scanner. "No, just another dust devil. This place is constantly in motion." The expedition team consisted of 8 cadets from 4 different species, all of them top candidates at the Galactic Academy of Exploration and Discovery. 2 Terrans, 2 Zephrinians, 2 Athari, and 2 Crystalline, all sent to this hostile environment to prove their worth. 5 days on Sci-Fi with minimal supplies, collecting samples and demonstrating survival skills. Success meant graduation with honors. Failure meant another year of training. Commander Vorek, the senior Athari officer overseeing the mission, had been explicitly clear during their descent to the surface. The parameters are simple: survive, collect, return. If 3 or more of you require medical evacuation to the pods, the entire mission is considered a failure. Lena watched as the Zephrinians glided effortlessly over a rocky outcropping, their semi-translucent wings catching the crimson light. Zephyr, the more outspoken of the pair, hovered momentarily before touching down beside her. "Anything useful in this sector, Terran?" he asked, not bothering to hide his dismissive tone. The Zephrinians had evolved on a gas giant with advanced technology integrated into their very biology. They viewed humans as primitive, barely worth acknowledging as sentient. "The preliminary scan shows a possible water source 2 kilometers east," Lena replied, ignoring his tone. "I was about to head that way." Zephyr's companion, Arya, descended with practiced grace. "Water? Our hydration systems are filtering atmospheric moisture at optimal efficiency. Why waste energy on a journey?" "Because," Lena explained patiently, "the atmospheric moisture collection rate is insufficient for 8 individuals over 5 days. The math doesn't work." Omar nodded in agreement. "She's right. We'd be operating at a 70% hydration deficit by day 3. Zephyr's bioluminescent markings pulsed with what Lena had learned to recognize as amusement. "Perhaps for Terrans with their inefficient biological processes, our systems require half your intake." Commander Vorek's voice crackled over the shared communication channel. "Cadet Hart's assessment is correct. Water procurement is priority 1. All teams converge on the eastern coordinates." Lena suppressed a smile as Zephyr's markings dimmed slightly. Small victories. The Crystalline cadets, Hura and Krell, had already begun moving east, their silicon-based bodies glittering as they navigated the terrain with methodical precision. The Athari pair, Talon and Mira, fell into formation behind them, their powerful quadrupedal frames easily handling the uneven ground. Lena checked her pack one more time. Unlike her companions, who relied heavily on technology, she had insisted on bringing several primitive survival tools: a collapsible shovel, carbon filtration tablets, a manual fire starter. The Zephrinians had openly mocked her during equipment selection, but Commander Vorek had allowed it. "Redundancy," he had said, "is never a weakness." 2 hours later, they crested a ridge and saw it, a narrow stream cutting through the valley below, its water an almost impossible blue against the rust-colored landscape. "Water source confirmed," Krell announced, his crystalline voice resonating oddly in the thin air. Lena was already moving down the slope, scanner in hand. She reached the water's edge and knelt, dipping the sensor probe into the clear liquid. The results appeared on her wrist display, and her excitement faded. "Heavy metal contamination," she announced to the others as they gathered around. "Mercury, lead, cadmium. Levels well above safe consumption parameters." Zephyr activated his own scanner, confirming her readings with a dismissive flick of his wings. "Useless. Then we should move on." "Not necessarily," Lena said slowly, her mind already working through possibilities. "I can filter this." The laughter that followed was immediate and universal, except from Omar, who merely looked doubtful, and Commander Vorik, who remained silent, observing. "With what?" Arya asked, her wing membranes vibrating with amusement. "Your primitive technology can't possibly handle this level of contamination." Lena stood, brushing dust from her suit. "Actually, I was thinking of something even more primitive. A gravity filtration system using natural materials." The silence that followed was almost worse than the laughter. "You mean dirt and rocks?" Talon, the male Othari, finally asked, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence to indicate disbelief. "Essentially, yes," Lena confirmed. "Layered filtration through gravel, sand, activated carbon, and plant material. It's an ancient Terran technique, but effective." "This is absurd," Zephyr declared. "Our nanofiltration systems can—" "Your nanofiltration systems require power cells we need to conserve," Lena interrupted. "And they weren't designed for this specific combination of contaminants." Commander Vorik finally spoke, his voice cutting through the debate. "The mission parameters are clear. 3 medical evacuations means failure for all. Cadet Hart, you have 4 hours to demonstrate your solution. The rest of you, begin collecting geological samples as planned. We reconvene here at sunset." As the others dispersed, some still chuckling at what they considered Lena's foolishness, Omar lingered behind. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "I mean, I know the theory, but in practice, with these contaminants—" Lena was already scanning the surroundings, looking for materials. "It'll work, Omar, but I could use some help gathering supplies." He hesitated, clearly torn between supporting his fellow Terran and avoiding association with a potential failure. Finally, he nodded. "What do you need?" For the next 3 hours, they worked steadily. Lena found a suitable container, a hollow section of silicon-based plant stem, waterproofed with resin from the same plant. Omar helped her collect different sizes of rock and gravel from the streambed, which they cleaned as best they could. They found the equivalent of sand on a higher ridge, far enough from the water to be less contaminated. The challenging part was finding a carbon source. Eventually, they located a stand of dead vegetation that resembled bamboo. Lena used her fire starter to carefully burn several pieces, creating crude activated charcoal. "The final layer should be plant matter," she explained as they worked. "Ideally, something fibrous to catch the smallest particles." They eventually settled on a moss-like growth from the north-facing rocks, which Lena tested and found to be non-toxic. By the time the others returned, Lena had constructed her filter, a layered system inside the hollow plant stem, with small drainage holes at the bottom. From bottom to top, clean gravel, smaller pebbles, sand, charcoal, more sand, and finally the moss-like material. Zephyr was the first to comment. "This is your solution? This primitive arrangement of dirt?" Lena didn't look up from her work. "This primitive arrangement has been used on Earth for thousands of years. The gravel and sand create a mechanical barrier for larger particles. The charcoal binds to organic contaminants and some heavy metals. The plant material catches the finest particles." "And you expect this to remove highly toxic heavy metals?" Arya asked incredulously. Not completely. No, Lena admitted. But it will reduce them significantly. Multiple filtration cycles should bring them down to acceptable emergency levels. Commander Vorik approached, examining her creation with his 4 eyes. A creative approach, Cadet Hart. But the proof will be in the testing. I'm aware, Commander. The first filtration is almost complete. All 8 of them watched as water slowly dripped from the bottom of her makeshift filter, collecting in a small container fashioned from another piece of plant stem. The process was painfully slow, each drop forming and falling with agonizing deliberation. When enough had collected for testing, Lena ran her scanner over it. Heavy metal concentration reduced by 62%. Still not safe, but better. I'll run it through again. 62% on the first pass is unexpected. Hurrah, the female crystalline admitted reluctantly. But still insufficient, Zephyr pointed out. Meanwhile, we could be using our nanofiltration systems to produce clean water immediately. At the cost of power we might need later, Omar countered, surprising Lena with his support. Let's at least see if a second filtration improves the results. The second filtration took another hour, during which time the others set up camp nearby. The suns were setting, casting long shadows across the alien landscape. Lena tested the twice-filtered water. 78% reduction now. One more pass should bring it within emergency consumption parameters. As darkness fell, the Zephrinians grew impatient. Zephyr activated his personal nanofiltration system, a sleek device integrated into his suit. While you wait for drops, we'll have clean water now. Arya followed his example, as did the crystalline cadets. The Othari looked uncertain, but eventually decided to join them. Only Omar remained with Lena, helping her prepare the third filtration. They might be right, you know, he said quietly. Technology has advanced beyond these methods for a reason. Lena nodded, watching another drop form at the bottom of her filter. Technology is wonderful, Omar. I'm not anti-tech, but technology fails. Power cells die, systems malfunction. When that happens, knowing the basics can save your life. The night cycle on Zephyr 9 was cold, temperatures dropping rapidly as the twin suns disappeared. The team huddled around a heat generator, sharing their findings from the day's sample collection. Everyone except Lena drank water from their nanofiltration systems, the devices humming softly as they processed the contaminated stream water. By morning, Lena had accumulated nearly a liter of triple-filtered water. Her scanner showed the heavy metal concentration, now at acceptable emergency levels. Not ideal for long-term consumption, but safe enough for short-term survival. "Would anyone like to test my water?" she offered, as they prepared for the day's expedition. No one volunteered. "Your dedication to primitive methods is admirable, Terran," Zephyr said, his tone making it clear it was not a compliment. "But unnecessary. Our technology has solved this problem efficiently." Lena shrugged, sipping her own filtered water, just offering an alternative. The second day passed without incident. The team collected biological and geological samples, mapping the immediate area around their camp. Lena continued to filter water, slowly building up a reserve in makeshift containers. Omar occasionally helped, but continued to use his nanofiltration system for his own drinking water. It was on the third day that things began to go wrong. Krell, the male crystalline, was the first to show symptoms. Despite their silicon-based biology, the crystalline were not immune to heavy metal poisoning. It affected them differently, causing disruptions in their crystalline matrix. Krell's normally smooth, faceted surface began showing cloudy patches. "I am experiencing difficulty," he announced during their midday break. "My system diagnostics indicate potential contamination." Hura examined him, her own crystalline form shifting with concern. "Your matrix is showing signs of mercury absorption. How is this possible? The nanofiltration should have removed all contaminants." All eyes turned to the nanofiltration devices they'd been using. Arya ran a diagnostic on hers, frowning at the results. "There appears to be a calibration issue," she admitted reluctantly. The systems were programmed for standard contaminants, but this particular combination of heavy metals in this atmospheric composition, it seems the filters have been operating at reduced efficiency. Lena kept her expression neutral, though part of her wanted to say, "I told you so." Instead, she asked, "How reduced?" Arya's bioluminescent patterns flickered with embarrassment. "Approximately 40% efficiency, rather than the standard 98%. Which means," Omar calculated quickly, "you've all been consuming water with dangerous levels of heavy metals for 2 days. Commander Vorek stepped forward. "Krell, report to the medical pod immediately for treatment. The rest of you who have been using the nanofiltration systems, run full diagnostics and assess your condition." Krell departed for the landing site where their medical pods were stationed. By evening, Arya was showing symptoms as well. Difficulty maintaining flight, dimming of her bioluminescent patterns. She too was sent to a medical pod. 2 down, 1 more, and the mission would be considered a failure. The mood in camp that night was somber. Zephyr, usually arrogant and vocal, was quiet, running repeated diagnostics on his own systems. The Athari pair conferred in low voices, their typically impassive faces showing concern. "Is anyone else experiencing symptoms?" Commander Vorek asked, looking around the group. Talon, the male Athari, reluctantly raised a hand. "I am detecting elevated metal levels in my bloodstream, though I am not yet experiencing severe symptoms." "Monitor your condition closely," the commander ordered. "At the first sign of deterioration, you will report to a medical pod. No heroics." After the commander moved away to contact the orbiting ship, Zephyr approached Lena, his wings folded tightly against his back, a sign of distress in Zephrinians. "Your filtered water," he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "You're certain it's safe?" Lena nodded. "Within emergency parameters. I've been drinking it for 3 days with no issues." "I would request access to your supply," Zephyr said, clearly struggling with the admission. "Of course," Lena replied, handing him one of her containers. "But it won't be enough for everyone. We need to scale up production." Zephyr stared at the simple container in his hands. "How would we do that?" "We build bigger filters. More of them. It's labor-intensive but requires no power. We have the materials all around us." By the next morning, Talon's condition had worsened, and he was evacuated to the 3rd medical pod. The mission now balanced on a knife edge. One more evacuation would mean failure for all of them. Under Lena's direction, the remaining team members, Omar, Zephyr, Hura, Mira, and herself, began constructing larger filtration systems, using the same principles as her original design. They worked through the day, gathering materials and building 5 large filters. "The process will still be slow," Lena warned as they finished. "But each filter should produce about 1 liter every 4 hours. We'll need to run the water through 3 times for safety." "That's over half a day for safe water," Mira, the female Athari, noted. "Yes, but once we have the cycle established, we'll have a continuous supply. The first batch will take the longest." They set up the filters and began the process. By nightfall, they had each completed 1 filtration cycle. The wait was frustrating, but no one complained. The reality of their situation, 3 teammates already evacuated, their high-tech solutions having failed, had silenced any criticism of Lena's primitive methods. That night, disaster struck again. The silica storms that had been forecast as a minor concern intensified unexpectedly. Winds, howling at over 200 kilometers per hour, swept through their camp, carrying abrasive particles that scoured everything in their path. The team huddled in emergency shelters, listening to the roar of the storm and the pinging of particles against the tough fabric. When morning came and the storm subsided, They emerged to find devastation. Much of their equipment was damaged or destroyed. The nanofiltration systems, already compromised, were now completely inoperative, their delicate mechanisms clogged with silica particles. But Lena's filters, simple and sturdy, had survived with minimal damage. A few had been knocked over, spilling their contents, but the materials remained usable. "We need to rebuild the filters immediately," Lena said, surveying the damage. "Check for contamination first. The storm may have introduced new particles." As they worked to restore the filtration systems, Hura began to show symptoms of heavy metal poisoning. Her crystalline structure was developing the same cloudy patches Krell had exhibited. "I can continue working," she insisted when Lena noticed. "No," Commander Vorik said firmly. "We cannot risk further deterioration. If your condition worsens beyond the capabilities of the medical pods, evacuation to a full medical facility would be necessary." "But Commander," Hura protested, "if I go to a medical pod, the mission fails." The commander's 4 eyes fixed on her. "The mission parameters are clear, but they do not supersede your well-being. If you require medical attention, you will receive it." A tense silence followed. Everyone understood what was at stake. "Perhaps," Lena said carefully, "there's a middle ground. Hura needs treatment, but not necessarily evacuation. Could we bring medication from the medical supplies to her, rather than sending her to the pod?" Commander Vorik considered this. "The medical pods contain chelation compounds for heavy metal poisoning. They could be administered here, provided her condition doesn't deteriorate further." Omar volunteered to retrieve the medication from the landing site. While he was gone, the others continued rebuilding the filtration systems, now working with a renewed sense of urgency. By midday, they had re-established 3 large filters and begun the process again. Hura received her first treatment of chelation compounds, which would help her body eliminate the heavy metals she'd absorbed. "I admit," Zephyr said as they watched the slow drip of water through one of the filters, "I underestimated the resilience of your design. Our technology failed when challenged by unfamiliar conditions." Lena nodded, accepting the closest thing to an apology she was likely to get from the proud Zephrinian. "Technology is amazing, but it's specialized. Nature has been filtering water since before our species existed. There's wisdom in those old methods." "Oh, wisdom I dismissed," Zephyr acknowledged. "My people pride themselves on technological advancement, but perhaps we've lost something in our rush to move beyond our origins." The 4th night was the hardest. With minimal shelter after the storm, they endured near-freezing temperatures. Their remaining emergency rations were running low. Hura's condition stabilized, but didn't improve. Everyone was exhausted, their bodies strained by the harsh conditions and the constant work of maintaining the water filters. But by morning, they had accumulated enough triple-filtered water to meet their needs for the final day. The heavy metal concentrations were within acceptable limits. More importantly, no one else had developed serious symptoms of poisoning. As they prepared for their final day of sample collection, Commander Vorik addressed the team. "You have all demonstrated remarkable adaptability in the face of unexpected challenges. This mission has tested not only your survival skills, but your ability to overcome prejudice and preconception. These are qualities that cannot be taught in a classroom." He turned to Lena. "Cadet Hart, your knowledge of fundamental survival techniques preserved this mission when our technology failed us. The Academy will be receiving my full report on the effectiveness of your methods under extreme conditions." Lena felt a flush of pride, but also a sense of vindication. She hadn't set out to prove anyone wrong. She'd simply wanted to ensure their survival using all available tools, including the ancient wisdom of her ancestors. The final day passed without incident. They collected their remaining samples, packed their equipment, and prepared for extraction. As the transport shuttle descended through Zephyr 9's turbulent atmosphere, Lena took a final look at the alien landscape where she'd proven herself. Zephyr approached as they waited to board. "Cadet Hart," he said formally, "I request permission to include your filtration design in my final report to the Academy. With full credit to you. Of course." Lena smiled. "Permission granted. But it's not my design. It belongs to thousands of years of human trial and error. I'm just passing it along." "Nevertheless," he insisted, "you demonstrated its value when others, myself included, dismissed it. That insight deserves recognition." As they boarded the shuttle, Commander Vorik pulled Lena aside. "The Academy emphasizes technological solutions because they are typically the most efficient. But efficiency is not the only measure of value. Resilience, simplicity, adaptability, these qualities saved your team." "Thank you, Commander," Lena replied. "I believe there's room for both approaches. Technology and tradition can complement each other." "Indeed," the commander agreed. "I am recommending that Sci-Fi 9 be designated as an advanced survival training location, with your filtration technique as a required skill for all cadets, regardless of species." The shuttle lifted off, carrying them away from the hostile planet that had challenged them in unexpected ways. As they docked with the Academy ship in orbit, Lena reflected on how much had changed in 5 days. She had arrived as an underestimated cadet with primitive ideas. She was returning as someone who had earned the respect of her teammates and potentially changed Academy training protocols. In the debriefing room, she was surprised when Hura approached her. The crystalline had recovered enough to return to duty, though faint, cloudy patches still marred her otherwise perfect structure. "Cadet Hart," she said, her crystalline voice resonating in the small space. "My people have an expression. The strongest crystal remembers it was once sand. I did not understand its meaning until now. We build upon what came before, and disregard that foundation at our peril." "That's beautiful. Hurrah," Lena said. "On Earth, we say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater." Not quite as poetic, but similar idea. Hurrah's crystalline face shifted in what Lena had learned to recognize as amusement. "Your species has a curious way with metaphors, but wisdom nonetheless." One by one, the other cadets came to acknowledge Lena's contribution to their survival. Even Commander Vorik, typically reserved, made a point of commending her publicly during the final mission assessment. Cadet Lena Hart demonstrated the quality most essential for exploration: the ability to adapt and utilize all available resources, whether technological or traditional. Her application of basic filtration principles not only provided safe water in a hostile environment, but proved resilient when advanced systems failed. 3 months later, Lena stood before a new class of cadets at the Academy, now wearing the insignia of a graduate instructor. On the display behind her was a diagram of her filtration system, now officially part of the survival training curriculum. "Welcome to Fundamental Survival Techniques," she began. "Some of you might wonder why, in an age of interstellar travel and molecular manipulation, we're going to spend time learning how to filter water with rocks and sand." She paused, looking at the diverse faces before her: humans, Zephrinians, Othari, crystalline, and a dozen other species, each with their own technologies, their own evolutionary advantages, and their own blind spots. The answer is simple: because the universe is full of surprises, because technology, no matter how advanced, has limitations, and because sometimes the oldest solutions are the most reliable. At the back of the room, she noticed Omar and Zephyr, both also wearing instructor insignia. They nodded in acknowledgement. Former teammates, now colleagues, united by the experience that had taught them all a valuable lesson. "Today," Lena continued, "we're going to learn about gravity filtration, a technique so simple that children on Earth used to build these systems as science projects, yet so effective that it saved 8 lives on Sci-Fi 9 when our most advanced technology failed." She activated the holographic display, showing the layered system she'd built on that distant planet. This isn't about rejecting technology. It's about expanding your toolkit, about understanding that progress doesn't always mean replacing the old with the new, but sometimes means rediscovering the wisdom of the past and integrating it with the innovations of the present. As she began the lesson, Lena thought about how far they'd all come from those tense days on Sci-Fi, how prejudices had been challenged, respect had been earned, and bridges had been built between different approaches to problem solving. In the vastness of space, with its infinite challenges and dangers, there was room for all kinds of knowledge, from the most sophisticated quantum computing to the most basic principles of nature. The key was knowing when to apply each, and having the humility to acknowledge that no single approach had all the answers. That was the real lesson of Sci-Fi, and one that Lena intended to pass on to every cadet who came through her classroom. Not just how to build a water filter from rocks and sand, but how to value all forms of knowledge, how to respect different perspectives, and how to find solutions in unexpected places. It was a lesson that might one day save their lives, just as it had saved hers and her teammates on a hostile planet with twin red suns and storms of swirling silica. "Now," she said to her attentive students, "let's begin." The journey of exploration was just beginning, but they would face it better equipped than those who had come before, armed not only with the latest technology, but with the timeless wisdom that had sustained life across countless worlds for billions of years. It was a powerful combination, and one that Lena was proud to help forge. As the Academy ship orbited a distant, blue-green world, preparing to send down another team of explorers, Lena looked out at the stars and smiled. There were mysteries out there waiting to be discovered, challenges to be overcome, and bridges to be built between different worlds and different ways of thinking. And perhaps, on some distant planet, someone else was looking up at those same stars, filtering water through sand and stone, and dreaming of the day when they too would journey beyond their world and share the wisdom they had gained. The universe was vast, but some things, like the need for clean water, the value of diverse perspectives, and the power of both tradition and innovation working in harmony, were universal. That was what Lena had learned on Sci-Fi, and what she would carry with her to every new world she explored. It was a lesson worth learning, no matter what species you were or what technology you possessed. A lesson as old as life itself, yet as relevant as ever in an age of interstellar exploration. Sometimes, the simplest solutions were the most profound, and sometimes, a primitive water filter could save not just lives, but understanding between different beings from different worlds. That was the legacy of Sci-Fi, a legacy of respect, resilience, and the rediscovery of ancient wisdom, a legacy that would spread across the stars, one cadet, one mission, one world at a time. And it had all begun with a stream of contaminated water, a handful of rocks and sand, and a cadet who remembered what others had forgotten. In the vast expanse of the cosmos, with all its wonders and dangers, that was a legacy worth preserving, a small but vital thread in the grand tapestry of galactic exploration. A reminder that the path forward sometimes required a respectful glance backward. Lena Hart had never set out to change Academy protocols or challenge interspecies prejudices. She had simply wanted to survive, and to help her teammates survive alongside her. But in doing so, she had sparked something greater, a re-evaluation of what knowledge was valuable, what wisdom was worth preserving, and what it truly meant to be advanced. As new cadets filed into her classroom day after day, eager to learn both the latest techniques and the oldest principles, Lena knew that the true exploration had only just begun, not just of distant worlds and alien environments, but of the vast potential that lay in bringing together the best of all worlds, all species, all approaches to problem solving. It was, perhaps, the greatest frontier of all. And she was proud to be part of that journey, one drop of filtered water at a time.